In this video, we're going to really dive into some of the details about this, what's driving these thunderstorms too. Plus, I want to talk about the snow that's ahead. I know a lot of you are looking forward to some snow as we head into January. Some, maybe not so. I'm going to talk about how I think the storm track changes and what we could be looking at. And some of the models are starting to show this. We're not just going to look at operational fantasy runs like this. We're going to talk about some of the details as to why we can expect what I think we're going to get. All right, thanks for watching the video today, guys. If you're brand new to the channel, a lot of new faces coming over and checking the videos out. I'm Travis. I used to be a chief meteorologist on television years ago. I found myself looking at stuff like this, so I started making videos about them. So the subscriber count continues to just blow me away. So thank you guys for coming back and for subscribing. Let's look at where we are as we head through this Saturday and the players on the field. We've got this trough that's swinging through Texas here in the upper levels. You're getting your jet streak that's swinging around the bottom of this. That's going to amplify our severe weather, and it's also going to be really warm and humid out ahead of this with a strong southerly flow off the Gulf of Mexico. Another thing that we're watching too across the east, some really warm conditions starting to develop here out ahead of this, but also into the Carolinas. We're scouring out some of that cold air tonight. That's going to set the stage for what we're looking at as we head into Sunday. Here's where our main concern is today, not just across Alabama and Louisiana, Mississippi, and East Texas, but as far north as Tennessee. I think you've got to watch these storms tonight from Chattanooga up to Knoxville, as far west as Memphis, even up into Nashville. Some of these storms could surprise you here into Tennessee, so keep a very close eye tonight on these as they move east, also into Alabama and Mississippi. But look at this area here, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, East Texas. That appears to be the bullseye here from the Storm Prediction Center. We now have this area hashed out as a significant severe risk from central and northern Mississippi all the way east into central Alabama, and then right along the Gulf Coast, and then into East Texas. Places like Texarkana, we're going to see severe thunderstorms. Some of these, again, could produce those strong EF3 tornadoes. Heading into Sunday, our risk moves east. Now, some of this will be overnight into the early morning hours, and this could be a nocturnal tornado threat tonight that will continue into tomorrow from the North Carolina mountains into North Georgia, east into the Piedmont of North Carolina, from Roanoke, Lynchburg, south to Greensboro, Winston-Salem, down to Charlotte, Boone, Asheville, all these cities across western North Carolina, down into South Carolina, Columbia, down to the coast. I think you watch these storms all the way down to Charleston, and then in Georgia, from Macon north to Atlanta. Severe thunderstorms possible also across parts of Florida, right along the Gulf Coast, so Tallahassee, all the way over to Jacksonville. Here are the ingredients to this severe weather setup today. We've got this potent mid-level jet streak that's moving through. These winds are somewhere between 60 and 80 knots, and they're going to round the bottom of this trough that's swinging through Texas. So here's your timestamp right over here on top of the screen, and that is Eastern time. And look, as we get around that 3-4 o'clock hour, that's when things really start to look interesting across East Texas in my mind. You've got this jet streak here, a lot of diffluence in the upper levels. That's the winds fanning out or spreading away from the thunderstorm development. That helps exhaust those storms. It helps keep them strong. And then it's also going to lead to the severe weather and the tornadoes. Surface dew points in this area are also starting to climb into the 60s. We're going to see the wind shear increase 45 to 55 knots, which is more than enough to support the development of dangerous supercells that could produce long-track tornadoes. The Storm Prediction Center is talking about that. So this is the kind of day you need to be weather aware. Have a way to get warnings when they come out, because this could be a deadly situation as we see these storms start to tap into this instability. And we also got an increasing low-level jet that's going to really help produce those strong long-track tornadoes. This is a life-threatening situation for parts of the Gulf Coast states. This is not just something I'm going to sugarcoat and say it's going to be a piece of cake, a walk in the park. This is very dangerous from Louisiana into southern Mississippi. So make sure, again, you have a way to get those warnings. That jet streak heads east as we head into the overnight hours. So that tornado threat is going to continue, again, with an ample amount of wind shear here showing up on the models. I see no reason that this is not going to be significant. The significant tornado parameter takes into account some instability, also that wind shear, and you can see how that threat continues. I really want to look at this heading into tonight, because I think that is an interesting thing, that it's going to keep these storms going and that tornado risk going into the night, not just through the evening hours. So now we're looking at 4, 5, 6 a.m., that tornado threat moving through parts of Alabama too, and then into the panhandle of Florida. Temperatures out ahead of this complex of thunderstorms will be warm. Dew points will be climbing into the 60s. We'll see that warm air squeeze north all the way into the Tennessee Valley, up the Mississippi River. So that's going to help just increase that instability as we head into the afternoon and evening hours. Notice this cool air here. I want to show you this across North Georgia, even over towards Chattanooga. You can kind of see that here. Watch how this gets scoured out as we head through the overnight. As our thunderstorm complex pushes to the east, our area of low pressure moves to the east, and you can see that warm air increasing. It's also feeding off of the Atlantic. So now we're pushing that unstable air in place of that cooler, more stable air, and that could lead to those thunderstorms as we head into Sunday. More to come on that. Let's take a look at the future radar. We're going to start here across East Texas, where these storms will start going through the day today. And as we head into the afternoon, they'll really get strong here, especially in and around Houston, here into East Texas. You know, once we get into the evening hours, especially around 3, 4, 5 o'clock, these storms right here into Louisiana and southeast Texas could be violent at this point and really starting to increase in coverage. And once we move past 5, 6 p.m., the storms really start to wane across Texas and western Louisiana. Here's a closer look at Louisiana. Arkansas, too, you're going to be under the threat for those strong thunderstorms, especially the further south you are. And then we see that threat spread up into Tennessee, too. Now, this would be through the morning hours. This is Eastern time again. So remember, this is about 11 o'clock. By 12, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, we see these storms continue to increase in coverage across Mississippi. I think there's 2 rounds. This first round moving through during the early afternoon, if you will, and then you've got your second round back to the west. Out ahead of this, again, this is where your strongest wind shear is going to be, so you're going to watch these cells right in this area here for any rotation, any cells that get off by themselves that start to move to the right a little bit, if you will. So if your average flow is going like this, all of a sudden you get one of these cells that start moving like this. That right-moving supercell is what you want to look for. And today's the kind of day where you would likely see that just because of all the parameters and everything coming into place here for just, this is textbook. This looks nasty as we move into the overnight too, because we're also probably going to develop a mesoscale convective complex. It's going to be a line of thunderstorms or a broad area of thunderstorms that start to develop and bow out. This bowing segment would likely lead to damaging winds. So even if we don't get tornadoes, it's looking more likely to develop these, not just across Alabama and Mississippi, but also up into Tennessee. Once we move through the evening hours, out ahead of our main line, watch for any supercells that develop. Also right along the Gulf Coast for any storms that move ashore here. But up into Mississippi now as we move toward 8, 9 o'clock tonight, these are some really strong storms moving through central Mississippi and southern Louisiana down to New Orleans. Now, even though we may not see the strongest threat here, we're still under the threat for tornadoes across a good chunk of Louisiana. As we look at this, I want to go back to our threat risk. Again, this is the outlook from the Storm Prediction Center. I mean, you've still got a pretty doggone decent, significant chance of some tornadoes here across southern Louisiana all the way to the Gulf Coast. And then look, across Mississippi and Alabama, that is your highest threat. All right, let's go back to the radar here as we move through the midnight hour. These storms continue to march to the east, getting very close to Nashville as we head through the midnight hour, close to 1 a.m. So this is going to be an overnight event too. Now you've got the risk of tornadoes, and really think about how early it gets dark. So we're talking about by 5, 6 o'clock, and even with the clouds, some would argue by 4 o'clock, it's almost dark out. The lights start coming on. So this is going to be a night tornado threat for many of these areas, which is a dangerous situation in my mind. I do not like anything about this. Again, please stay weather aware today. As we head into Sunday, now we've got these storms going into Alabama and the panhandle of Florida. Overnight, the threat will start to wane some. It's not zero, and it's not going away. So keep those NOAA weather radios going. Have your phone. Make sure it's charged. Make sure you have a way to get alerts that will wake you up in the middle of the night. And also make sure you have a plan of what to do. Now, these storms continue to the north of this too, across Tennessee. Once we move through the overnight hours, they start to move into East Tennessee here too, widening things out as we move into the early morning hours. East Tennessee, parts of Kentucky, we could see these thunderstorms roll through in the morning hours. They're not going to be nearly as strong, or at least the ingredients aren't going to be as favorable as what we're seeing across the south, but still some decent thunderstorms moving through Kentucky, East Tennessee, and this is some really heavy rain too. And now look at everything lining up with our low back here, moving through Kentucky and Tennessee, and your severe threat now starting to shift a little bit further to the east through Sunday morning. Sunday afternoon, we'll start to see our conditions increase for some strong to severe thunderstorms across the coastal Carolina, but look how these bowing segments are showing up even as early as Sunday morning through parts of Georgia and South Carolina. So this could lead to damaging winds, even a few tornadoes embedded in this as well. There's at least a risk of tornadoes as far north as West Virginia. So from Charleston east all the way over to Charlottesville and then south toward the Tidewater of Virginia, Norfolk, up to the Hampton Roads area, Richmond, Roanoke, all the way south. And then you've got that increased chance here across the Piedmont of North Carolina. It looks like from Winston-Salem over to Greensboro. I don't know if it goes all the way over to Raleigh, but I would go ahead and say, look, pay attention to these storms as we head into the day Sunday. And then south towards Charlotte, the risk here has increased on the outlook, and then down towards Georgia, Augusta, Columbia, also into South Carolina. And then as far south, we've talked about the panhandle of Florida. Sunday afternoon and Sunday evening, these storms march to the east. Now we're looking at them moving off the coast of South Carolina. While most of the dynamics move well north of Florida, some of these could get strong or severe here, and then the storms continue to move offshore. No severe weather expected up into New England. We're too cool here, and we're just looking at some rain showers as this moves off to the north. Okay, let's look at what happens behind this, because I do believe we're in for some cold weather, and I think we're in for some snow too. And January, to me, in my mind, hasn't changed. You may see the models flip-flopping. I'm not going to flip-flop right now because I think there's just too many things coming together that line up for a cold. And look, you got to get this pattern in place to see the snow. I love all the naysayers that say it's not ever going to snow. I know you've been hurt. Your heart's been hurt in the past, but I say that jokingly, but the pattern's there. We can argue about the weather. Everyone's got an opinion on the weather. This is mine, and I think it's going to turn cold, and I think it's going to turn snowy as we head into January. The long-term European weeklies are dropping your polar vortex south here across the Hudson Bay. You've got your ridging up across Alaska. You've got your ridging across Greenland. This is your blocking pattern that would either send your lows across the south and out to sea, which technically could squelch things, but all it takes is one of them to move up the coast for the right things to come together, and you've got to have that pattern, and it's there. The long-term European weekly snow output, I showed this yesterday. Again, one day ago, notice this 1-inch snow line, also the pink line where it is. If you move it ahead to overnight's run, it's a little bit further south, right? So even the long-term models are picking up on the idea of snow. I always look at the ensembles, and there are multiple members, up to 50 or so. And, you know, when you start to see several of them cranking out big snowstorms, and some of them in very strange places too, especially across the Carolinas, you start to see some back toward the Midwest. And look, there's a lot of color on this map. That tells me that there's a significant chance of snowstorms heading into January. The GEFS ensembles also showing multiple snowstorms, pinpointing exactly where that's going to be. At this point, in my opinion, impossible. But I think there are going to be multiple chances too. Let's take it day by day. We'll go all the way through the weekend. There goes your storm into the northeast. It's going to bring that heavy rain we've talked about already across the south. But look how we go from rain to snow across Michigan as we head into Sunday. That's looking more and more likely as we dynamically cool the atmosphere with this really strong area of low pressure that's brought all the severe weather to the south as it moves toward the Great Lakes. A lot of upper level energy with this too. So now some snow possible here. It doesn't look like a huge snowstorm, but it's looking a little more significant to me on the overnight runs. And now as we head into early next week, we're watching this area of low pressure that's moving through the Ohio Valley. Now, at first, it's going to drop through the plains. It could bring some light snow here to parts of South Dakota, Nebraska, and then it moves to the east, and we start to see just rain here. Your cold air still back up in here. It's going to start to move south, though, as we head into the 1st and the 2nd of January. As this low moves towards the coast, it's going to likely deepen and bring some snow into the northeast, heading into Wednesday and Thursday. There's been some questions about how strong this will get. At this point, it looks like it's just going to bring snow to interior areas, and now we're cold, and we start to set up the potential for some snow across the east with different systems moving through. Now, a couple of clipper systems would move through. You've got to watch for any energy that would dive to the south, and again, I don't know where it's going to be, when it's going to form, and some would say, well, that's ridiculous. I mean, come on, guys, this far out, no one knows. But we're starting to see these snowstorms show up in the model. So you've got clipper systems, you've got other pieces of upper level energy that are moving through that could spawn up a snowstorm just about anywhere. The GFS not nearly as bullish with the snow. And by the way, this is the European showing that rain to snow across Michigan and some snow across the Intermountain West, which we're going to look at some of the detailed weather across the country in just a moment. But I want to look at the long-term snow outlook as we head toward Wednesday and Thursday. There's that low moving into the northeast with some snow behind it here from the Great Lakes down into the Appalachians, into the northeast. Not the coast, though. We turn cold behind this. Some lake effect going here. Another snow into the west, some rain here too. And now we turn cold in the east, and we see another system. This could be a pretty strong storm moving into the west with some decent snow here heading into next weekend. I'm watching this storm, as it moves across the country. The pink is freezing rain. Now, don't dig into this too much. This could be a pretty decent winter storm. It doesn't move toward the Great Lakes. The European says it does. So let's watch next weekend. The European was here. The GFS had a totally different situation. And look, if it goes this way versus what the GFS was showing, you've changed everything beyond this point. But look what both models are showing, these East Coast snowstorms. And boy, that's getting significant. That's pretty far out too, but pretty wild to see that. A closer look at the Northeast, because we've really dug into what's going on across the South. We're mild through the weekend compared to where we could be this time of year. We've got rain increasing as we head into Sunday. Windy conditions, too, will also start to develop across a lot of this area, and the rain could be heavy at times heading into late Sunday night into early Monday morning as our area of low pressure moves just to your west into Ontario. Rain over to snow here in the southern parts of Ontario in some areas, and then it moves out pretty quickly. It takes a while to get cold, and we could see a few snow showers into parts of the northern mountains of New York, up into Vermont and New Hampshire. And then the next system moves our way on Tuesday, bringing more rain here. This one is a little colder, though, right? So now you've got a better chance for snow across southern Ontario, back into western New York and Pennsylvania, and into the Appalachians and to the mountains here. The Green and White Mountains will get some snow out of this, it looks like. And then our cold air rushes in behind this storm. Across the Midwest, a little bit further to the west, across the Great Lakes too, we've got warmer air here that starts to cool down slowly. It's going to take a little while. Here comes our low as we head into Sunday, bringing a widespread shield of rain, if you will, over from Chicago into central Michigan, Indiana, Illinois, Ohio. It's going to be a wet go heading on into Sunday evening. And then there's your dynamic cooling happening across Michigan that could bring us some snow. It could bring several inches here. At this point, looks just like a few, and then it moves out pretty quickly. I think it's going to be so marginal for snow. We may not see a tremendous amount. However, it could surprise in a few areas. A quick look at those snow totals, timing that out as we head into Sunday night into early Monday morning. Most areas just seeing a couple of inches, but notice how we're starting to see these higher totals show up with greater than 6 inches in a few spots across northern Michigan. Something worth watching. I will have another update coming for you heading into Sunday, and we'll dig into this a little bit more as new data comes in. Temperatures clearly warming up here into the 40s ahead of our system, but look at what happens. We turn cold heading into next week, and the cold does return heading into next week, especially across Minnesota and Wisconsin, with temperatures dropping below zero by the end of the week. Across the Central Plains, we've talked all about that severe weather across the southern part of the United States, but otherwise we're fairly quiet this weekend. Across the Central Plains, across the Northern Plains, a weak system moves through heading into Sunday night and Monday. That's going to bring some snow from Wyoming, Montana, into South Dakota and Nebraska. I briefly talked about that. And then that system moves east with some rain showers here. And then across the west, just a tremendous amount of moisture moving in here with more rain and heavy snow from the Cascades. This takes you through Saturday. A bit of a break across the Sierras. We'll see some rain and snow move back in those. We head into Sunday, and that snow could start to really pick up here, also into the mountains of Idaho and Montana, with several feet of snow by the time everything is said and done as we move toward the middle part of next week with another storm that is poised to move in, bringing more rain and snow to this area. Take a look at these snow totals. This will take you out through Monday morning, some of the higher elevations up to 2 feet, especially here in the mountains of Wyoming and Idaho and into the Cascades. Several feet of snow here all the way into the rest of the week with more moisture moving in as the snow just continues. So that's all I've got. A little bit of a longer video today, guys. Be weather aware, be safe today, and I will see you next time.